And when they say you can't, they're not really talking about you. They're revealing what they believe about themselves. Most people operate within the limits of their own imagination. So when they say it's impossible, they're really saying they can't see how it's possible. That doesn't mean it isn't. That doesn't mean you can't. It just means their vision is too small to hold your destiny. And if you let their voice become louder than your own, you risk shrinking to fit inside their version of who you're supposed to be. You've got to decide right now who gets to define your worth, because the world will try to hand you a label: too loud, too quiet, too ambitious, not enough, just average. And if you're not careful, you'll carry those labels around like they're facts. But listen to me. Nobody gets to write your story unless you hand them the pen. The truth is, you already are enough. Not someday, not when you've achieved more or earned their approval. You are enough right now. You see, people will project their fears onto you, their own unhealed disappointments, their regrets, their belief that success is only for special people, not people like you. And that's the lie. That's the thing you've got to break through. Because if you don't, you'll start believing the script they handed you instead of writing your own. And trust me, there's nothing more painful than living a life small enough to make others comfortable. Let me tell you something you already know deep down. You've got something unique. A voice, a vision, a gift, a fire that nobody else has in quite the same way. But that gift can stay buried if you let the noise around you drown it out. Don't let the world put you in a box you were never meant to fit in. Don't let fear disguised as advice stop you from chasing what sets your soul on fire. There are people who will underestimate you. There are people who will look you in the eye and tell you to settle. People who say, be realistic. And when they say that, what they really mean is, play small enough to make me feel comfortable. But that's not your job. Your job is to honor the calling inside you, to follow that pull you feel, even when no one else understands it. Especially then, because it's in those moments when you choose your inner voice over their outer noise that you start becoming who you were truly meant to be. And listen, proving them wrong doesn't mean getting bitter. It doesn't mean carrying a chip on your shoulder. It means getting better. It means rising, growing, evolving, not because you owe it to them, but because you owe it to yourself. Because you were never meant to live life proving your value. You were meant to know your value. And when you know it, you don't have to fight for every inch of validation. You walk in it, you own it, you move differently when you're rooted in your own worth. I know it's hard sometimes. I know what it's like to hear those voices, to feel like maybe they're right, maybe I can't, maybe I won't. But let me tell you something. Those voices don't get the final say. You do. And your power doesn't come from pretending you have no doubt. It comes from choosing belief even in the doubt. That's where transformation happens. That's where the old you ends and the real you begins. So when they say you can't, smile. Not out of arrogance, but because deep inside, you already know something they don't. You will. You've already decided. Their disbelief isn't your burden. Let it bounce off, let it roll away, and then let your actions speak. Not to prove them wrong out of anger, but to prove to yourself that they never had the right to measure you in the first place. They said you couldn't. Now show them you already did.
Every no you've ever heard, every time someone looked at you and didn't believe, every door that slammed in your face, it wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to build you. I know that's hard to hear when you're still bleeding from the bruise, when the wound is still fresh. But let me tell you something. Rejection isn't the end. It's often the beginning of something far greater than what you were reaching for in the first place. And when someone tells you that you can't do it, when they dismiss your dream or laugh at your ambition, that's not the moment to retreat. That's because it wasn't meant to hold what you were about to become. Sometimes the no isn't punishment, it's protection. And if you keep chasing approval, you'll keep running in circles around people who were never meant to understand your path. See, the difference between people who rise and people who stay stuck isn't whether or not they were rejected, it's what they did with the rejection. The people who rise take it personally for a moment, then they take it purposefully. They don't use it to shrink, they use it to sharpen, to focus, to drive themselves deeper into who they're meant to be. I want you to remember something. Every time someone doubted you, they gave you a gift. It might not have felt like it at the time, but they handed you a decision point, a crossroads. You could have let that moment defeat you, but instead, here you are, still standing, still breathing, still hungry. That means something. That means you haven't given up on yourself. And that, my friend, is powerful. Your story doesn't end with a no. It evolves through it. Every time you get back up, you're writing the next line. Every time you push forward, you're showing the world and yourself that you don't need permission to rise. You only need the courage to keep going. Fuel isn't always pretty. It's not always clean. Sometimes it's the pain of being overlooked. Sometimes it's the sting of being left out, underestimated, or misunderstood. But pain can push you toward purpose if you let it. You've got to grab hold of that fire and make it work for you. Not to hurt others, not to carry bitterness, but to prove with every step that your belief in yourself is louder than their disbelief in you. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. When you pour your heart into something and it's rejected, it can feel like you're not enough. But what if that rejection is just part of the shaping? What if that no is simply redirecting you to something better, something more aligned with who you truly are? What if, instead of being a dead end, it's a turn toward something that fits you more fully? You see, fuel doesn't come from comfort. It comes from the friction, from the tension between where you are, where power and where you know you're supposed to be. Growth happens. That's the birthplace of transformation. So don't run from the rejection. Sit with it, learn from it, and then rise from it with new focus, with deeper clarity, with more hunger than ever before. Because now you're not just chasing a goal, you're living with purpose. Now it's personal, now it's real, and that's when things start to shift. Let your next move be your loudest response. Let your consistency, your integrity, your relentless pursuit of what you know is possible say everything that needs to be said. Because they might. Have told you no, but you're about to show them, watch me. You have to know what you bring to the table, because if you don't, the world will convince you that you have nothing. And that's just not true. But I'll tell you this, until you recognize your own worth, it's going to be really hard for anyone else to see it. It starts with you. It starts with looking in the mirror, not to criticize, not to compare, but to remember who you are before the world started layering opinions, judgments, and limitations on top of you. Underneath all that noise is the real you, strong, capable, worthy. You don't have to become someone else to be valuable. You don't have to earn validation, overgiving, or pretending to be less than you are just to make others feel more comfortable. What you bring is already enough. Your perspective, your experience, your struggles, your strengths. That combination is yours alone. Nobody else can offer what you can. Nobody else is who you are. That's not something you have to compete for. That's something you have to own. But here's the truth. When you don't see your own value, you start settling. You're tolerating things that drain you. You stay in places where you're not respected. You keep people around who don't. You recognize your worth. But before you know it, you're living a life that doesn't reflect your true identity at all. You're just surviving in someone else's version of enough. That's not what you were made for. You were made to thrive, to walk into rooms and not wonder if you belong, but to know that you do, to stop seeking permission to be great and start realizing that greatness has been in you all along. That it's not who we are. The world doesn't give you value. It only reflects back what you already believe about yourself. So the question is, what are you reflecting? We've been conditioned to downplay ourselves, to say, I'm just doing my best, when what you're really doing is extraordinary, to brush off compliments, to dim our light so others won't feel insecure. But shrinking doesn't serve anyone. And it certainly doesn't serve your purpose. You weren't meant to tiptoe through life hoping you don't offend anyone by being powerful. You were meant to rise, you were meant to shine so brightly that it gives others permission to do the same. You see, people treat you based on the energy you carry. When you show up unsure, hesitant, doubting your voice, the world mirrors that energy back to you. But when you walk in with certainty, not arrogance, but deep knowing, everything shifts. Doors open, respect follows, opportunities find you, not because you begged for them, but because you stop hiding from yourself. And listen, this isn't about pretending to be confident. It's about remembering the truth that you've already overcome things most people wouldn't even believe, that you've made it through storms you never thought you'd survive, that you've been counted out and still kept going, that you've shown up again and again, even when nobody was clapping. That's worth something. That's worth everything. But here's where it changes. You've got to stop waiting for someone to validate you before you act. Stop waiting for someone to say, you're ready. You've been ready. The only thing left to do now is believe it. You don't need to compare your journey to someone else's. Your timing is your own. Your story is your own. And the very things that make you different, those are your superpowers. When you know what you bring to the table, you stop asking for a seat, you build the table. You create your own lane. You speak with clarity, with confidence, with conviction. You're not threatened by other people's success because you understand there's no scarcity in purpose. There's space for all. And grown through that makes you who you are. That's your power, that's your message, that's your reason. And once you know it, truly know it, nothing and no one can take it away from you. Own it, speak it, live it. You don't need to announce every move. You don't need to explain your vision to people who aren't ready to see it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is go quiet, not because you're hiding, but because you're building. See, when you're in the process of becoming, not everyone will understand. And that's okay. You don't need to convince them. You just need to stay consistent. Too many people waste energy trying to get others on board, trying to prove their worth in the early stages. But you don't owe anyone your blueprint while you're still laying the foundation. What you owe yourself is focus, discipline, vision, not noise. Not validation, and definitely not the approval of people who only show up when the success becomes obvious. They weren't with you in the dark room. They didn't see the late nights, the lonely mornings, the self-doubt you fought through just to stay in the game. They don't need to understand now. This is where it gets real. Your progress doesn't need applause. If your growth is still silent, that doesn't mean it's not happening. It means it's sacred. It means it's yours. Some of the strongest breakthroughs happen when nobody's watching, because in the silence, that's where character is built. That's where the inner voice gets louder than the outer noise. That's where you stop performing and start transforming. People might question you when you don't talk about your next move. Let them. Let them think you've slowed down. Let them think you've stopped. That's not your concern, because while they're watching for evidence, you're working on elevation. You're not here to impress, you're here to impact. And impact doesn't require a spotlight. It requires commitment, integrity. You see, success isn't about being seen, it's about becoming. And the becoming happens in the quiet. The becoming happens when you're showing up every day for something no one else even knows you're building. When you're staying up late, not to scroll, but to sharpen. when you're saying no to distractions because your future is more important than temporary comfort. That's where greatness is shaped, not in the highlight reel, in the behind the scenes. So stop needing to prove it, stop needing to broadcast it. When you know who you are and where you're going, you don't need to scream it from the rooftops. You move differently. You move with purpose. You move with patience. Because the people who are truly destined for something don't chase attention, they attract it. And they attract it by mastering the art of silent progress. Some of the most powerful work you'll ever do will go unnoticed by the world, but that doesn't make it less valuable, it makes it more. Because you're not building for the show, you're building for the shift in your identity, the shift in your belief, the shift in your entire trajectory. And that kind of work, that kind of growth, it demands quiet, it demands solitude, it demands that you choose progress over praise every single time. This is where your strength is tested, because silence can feel like loneliness. It can feel like nobody sees you, like your effort isn't producing anything. But growth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it happens slowly, like water shaping stone. You won't see it at first, but one day you'll look up and everything will be different. You'll be different, and the world will have no choice but to notice what you became in the dark. But even then, even when the results start showing, you don't have to switch gears and become loud about it. Let your life speak, let your energy speak, let the way you carry yourself, the way you walk in a room, the way you stay grounded, that's what tells the story. The most powerful voices are often the ones that never have to raise their volume, because presence is louder than noise, consistency is louder than hype. And the real progress, it doesn't need permission to be respected. So keep going, keep building, keep rising. You're not behind just because no one sees you yet. You're not failing just because it's taking time. You're mastering the art of silent progress, and that is where your real power lives. Oh, somebody restoring you. Don't be fools.